On the night of December 16th, 1984, in an apartment building in Hong Kong, a young woman's anguished cries pierced the silence. Her boyfriend had vanished without a trace after stepping into an elevator. When rescue teams arrived, they discovered something far more terrifying than an ordinary accident. Who was the perpetrator? And what was the motive behind this case? Let's explore this mystery with crime documentary files. On Sunday evening, December 16, 1984, in the Ko Chu Road housing complex in Yau Tong District, 24-year-old Hoan and his 23-year-old girlfriend Ah Jen walked hand in hand, chatting cheerfully along their familiar route. That evening, Ah Jen had been invited to Hoan's family home for dinner. Hoan's parents were delighted with this gentle young woman and had prepared an elaborate feast to welcome her. Fortunately, both families lived in the same Ko Chu Road complex, not far from each other. After dinner, Hoan walked his girlfriend home. They strolled leisurely to Building 6, where Ah Jen lived. Ah Jen invited Hoan up with a bright smile, and he happily accepted. The family's apartment on the 13th floor became warmer with the young man's presence. Ah Jen's father, in the excited mood of a father pleased with his daughter's choice, enthusiastically pulled Hoan to sit on the living room sofa for conversation. However, realizing that tomorrow was Monday and both had to work, Hoan politely stood up at 10:45 p.m., said goodbye, and left. As usual, Ah Jen went to the living room window to look down below, but strangely, after more than 10 minutes had passed, she still couldn't see her boyfriend anywhere. Usually, it only took about 5 minutes for him to leave the building, but today was unusually long. An uneasy feeling crept into her heart. Without hesitation, Ah Jen called her father, and they both went downstairs to look for Hoan. When they arrived, they discovered that one of the building's 2 elevators was stuck between the 6th and 7th floors. Sensing something was wrong, Ah Jen's father immediately took the stairs down to the 7th floor. Through the gap in the elevator doors, he was shocked to see a figure swaying on top of the elevator cabin. Thinking that his daughter's boyfriend might have encountered trouble in the elevator and had to climb onto the roof through the emergency exit, he immediately informed Ah Jen. She quickly ran home to get a flashlight, then returned to the 7th floor to check, shining the light while calling out his name, but only terrifying silence answered back. It wasn't until 11 p.m., when hope was fading, that Ah Jen called the police. Immediately after receiving the report, police quickly coordinated with the fire department and rushed to the apartment complex on Ko Chu Road. This was a public housing development built between 1971 and 1973, consisting of 11 buildings, each 14 stories tall, each building equipped with 2 elevators serving residents. Based on Ah Jen's account that her boyfriend might be trapped on top of the elevator, authorities quickly deployed rescue operations. Firefighters approached the 7th floor, used specialized tools to open the elevator doors, then sent a worker equipped with a headlamp down into the dark elevator shaft to search for the victim. When he first stepped onto the elevator roof, the flashlight beam illuminated a large pool of blood, but no one was there. Looking around more carefully, the firefighter discovered a man huddled in a corner of the wall with a large bag beside him. He said nothing, his face showing clear panic, his eyes empty, as if he had just witnessed something horrific. After a quick health check, rescue workers determined the man had only minor injuries around his eye, with no other serious trauma. They secured a safety rope around him and slowly brought him up from the elevator shaft. However, when the man's face became clear under the light, something unexpected happened. Ah Jen immediately stepped back, shocked, exclaiming, "This isn't Hoan!" The person the firefighter had just rescued wasn't her boyfriend, but Liu Wenjiang, 23 years old, a longtime acquaintance who also lived in the Ko Chu Road complex. Stunned but still hopeful, Ah Jen rushed forward asking urgently, "Did you see Hoan? Where is he?" But Wenjiang just sat there silently, his eyes vacant, absolutely not uttering a word. The feeling of unease spread quickly. The firefighter returned to the elevator shaft to bring up the large bag. But when he looked down, the light shining to the bottom of the shaft left them speechless. Below the bag was a body lying crumpled and motionless, apparently a man. The terrible news was immediately reported. Hearing this, Ajen froze, her hands and feet turning cold, a horrible premonition hitting her heart. The person lying at the bottom of the shaft was very likely Hoan. Immediately after, rescue workers shifted focus to the ground floor, where the bottom elevator door was opened with specialized equipment. And then, fear became reality. At the bottom of the elevator shaft was a man. After identity confirmation, the body of the man at the bottom of the elevator shaft was indeed Hoan, Ajen's boyfriend. However, when he was pulled up, he was unconscious. His body was covered with injuries, especially his neck, which was tightly constricted by a nylon rope, and his head showed signs of severe impact. Despite being rushed to the hospital for emergency treatment that night, Hoan couldn't survive. He was confirmed dead just a few hours later. Ajen completely collapsed. Just the day before, they had been talking and laughing together, painting a future full of hope. Now, one was alive while the other was dead. Her painful cries echoed throughout the hospital corridors, tearing through the silence of the late night. Police quickly got involved. The injuries on Hoan's body, including the neck constriction, signs of beating, and a stab wound, made them suspect this wasn't a simple accident, but a premeditated murder. Wenjang, the person rescued from the elevator shaft earlier, immediately became the primary suspect under investigation. After being discharged from the hospital, he was taken home in an extremely unstable psychological state. Complete silence, avoiding eye contact with others, and trembling whenever asked about what happened in the elevator shaft. Even more suspicious was that after careful inspection, police discovered the building's other elevator had also been broken beforehand. This meant Hoan had only one choice: to use the very elevator that led to his tragic end. Was it just a coincidence? Or was it a trap calculated in advance? Police ruled out the possibility of a simple accident. The evidence at the scene and injuries on Hoan's body indicated this was a carefully planned murder conspiracy. The first clue that caught their attention was the special relationship between Wenjang and the victim. Although they didn't grow up together, Wenjang and Hoan had become close in a strange way. 6 years earlier, they first met during a service at church. Coincidentally, both lived in the same building on Kochu Road. From that meeting, the two bonded quickly, attending services together, sharing daily worries, and gradually becoming inseparable friends. What made this relationship even deeper was their harmony in faith and spirit. With that foundation, they trusted each other absolutely, like blood brothers in the glamorous but isolated city. Hoan came from a modest family, the eldest of 5 brothers. The pressure of providing for the family always weighed heavily on his shoulders. Whenever his family faced difficulties, the first person to appear was always Wenjang. He readily took money from his part-time work, bought rice and food, helping Hoan's family get through tough times. Hoan was very grateful and considered Wenjang like a blood brother. Then, on the boat of friendship between the two young men, a girl appeared. That was Ajen, a gentle, dignified girl who always spoke softly. The type of person that anyone could easily feel affection for after just one meeting. She also lived on Kochu Road and often visited the church when free. From chance encounters in hallways and conversations after services, the three gradually became close. They began attending church together, sharing stories about studies, faith, and youthful dreams. Everyone in the parish began calling them by an affectionate name, the Kochu Road Trio. At that time, all 3 were still high school students. Their academic achievements were all outstanding, with promising futures. They made a pact together. They would try to get into the same university so no one would be left behind, so this beautiful friendship could continue through the years. And they succeeded. Through relentless effort, each one passed the entrance exam to Hong Kong Polytechnic. At that time, getting into this school was the dream of countless students. Their families were proud, the church was pleased. The Kochu Road Trio had truly shone. The university years were the most beautiful period of their lives. They studied together, ate together, participated in club activities together. Hoan and Wenjang always showed special care for Ajen, like two older brothers silently caring for their little sister. At this point, it seemed Wenjang had no motive to kill Hoan. But this assumption was quickly refuted by Zhen herself. She told police an important detail, a seemingly harmless puzzle piece that, when placed correctly in the overall picture, pointed the arrow of suspicion directly at Wenjang. People often say that in a friendship of three, sooner or later one person will feel left out, and in the Kochu road trio, that person was initially Hoan. Because Wenjang and Zhen were the same age and had been close since childhood, they were closer at first. Wenjang was always the proactive one, inviting Zhen to study groups, asking her to participate in church activities, and after each gathering, he always volunteered to walk her home. Gradually, a different feeling sprouted in Wenjang's heart. The pure friendship of early days had been replaced by something gentler, but more intense: love. However, Wenjang chose silence. He didn't confess, nor did he pressure her. He simply stayed by her side, quietly watching, quietly protecting, like an unnamed, unofficial confidant. But it was this very silence that planted the seeds for the tragedies that followed. Wenjang was a devout Christian. He believed that love was a sacred gift from God, and nothing that happened was ever coincidental. To Wenjang, his growing closeness with Zhen was divine arrangement. He just needed to continue silently by her side, and sooner or later love would bloom. But it was all an illusion, a beautiful dream that only he was lost in believing. Because to Zhen, Wenjang was just a kind and trustworthy older brother figure, nothing more, nothing less. She had never looked at him with different eyes, much less thought that after years of companionship, Wenjang loved her with such a silent, complete heart. Time passed, and everyone's life gradually changed. Hoan had graduated and had a stable engineering job. Meanwhile, Zhen and Wenjang continued their higher education. Zhen's family wasn't well off, so besides studying, she often took part-time jobs to help support her family. She got a job as an assistant at a social welfare organization, and it was there that a colleague began to develop feelings for her. Although she wasn't moved, Zhen couldn't bear to reject him too harshly. Each time the colleague offered to drive her to school, out of politeness, she could only reluctantly nod. But to Wenjang, those rides were like knives cutting into his heart. He began to feel anxious. Had God forgotten his prayers? Or was his pure love not strong enough to keep her by his side? Once, when Zhen and her colleague had just arrived at the school gate, they happened to encounter Wenjang passing by. At that moment, Wenjang's eyes darkened. Seeing the girl he secretly loved walking beside another man, undisguised anger appeared on his face. That look was cold as ice and as painful as betrayal. The atmosphere immediately became tense and suffocating. Zhen was stunned, not understanding why Wenjang would react this way. To her, it was just a normal ride to school. But to Wenjang, it was a heavy blow to a heart already too fragile after months of hope. His unreasonable anger made Zhen feel hurt, even insulted and controlled. From then on, she deliberately avoided Wenjang, keeping a clear distance. But the human heart always has room for forgiveness, especially when it's a friendship of many years. Zhen didn't want to let a beautiful relationship fall apart because of one impulsive moment. After Wenjang came to apologize many times with sincere attitude and deep remorse, her kind heart softened. She didn't want things to become too tense. The two gradually reconciled, trying to act as if nothing had happened. On Zhen's side, she had also ended the troublesome pursuit from that colleague. Without knowing when, Zhen's heart began to lean toward Hoan. He was mature, calm, and always made her feel safe and respected. And Hoan had long admired Zhen's gentleness and sincerity. They came together naturally, without needing too many confessions, just eye contact and understanding. Similar backgrounds, similar lifestyles, harmonious souls. Everything made the love between them blossom as gently as an early autumn breeze. However, they weren't in a hurry to make this relationship public to Wenjang. Perhaps because the memory of his previous jealousy was still there, They decided to wait for the right moment to share this good news with their close friend. They wanted to find a gentle, tactful way to announce it, hoping Wenjang would bless their happiness. While Hoan and Zhen's love was quietly blooming, another heart was enduring intense pain. Wenjang, with the keen eyes of a man in love, had quickly sensed the subtle changes in the atmosphere around him. Something wasn't right. Even the smallest gestures couldn't escape his notice. The way Zhen smiled when mentioning Hoan, how her eyes softened whenever their close friend appeared, or the coincidental meetings that happened too frequently between the couple. Wenjang's greatest fear was gradually becoming reality. Hoan, his closest friend, the person he considered a blood brother, might be stealing away the girl he had secretly loved for so long. After sleepless nights and days of troubled thoughts, Wenjang finally decided to bet everything on one attempt. He would confess his feelings. Perhaps Zhen would realize that true love was right beside her. The fateful meeting took place in an ordinary setting, but for Wenjang, it was the most important moment of his life. With trembling hands and a pounding heart, he gathered all his courage to confess the feelings he had buried for so long. But instead of the reaction he hoped for, Zhen responded with a painful truth. She and Hoan were officially in love. Wenjang's world collapsed in an instant. He completely lost the control he had always prided himself on. His trembling hands gripped Zhen's arm tightly, with pressure so intense it could leave bruises. The more he spoke, the more agitated he became, questions and accusations pouring out like a flood. Wenjang's usually gentle face had transformed into a terrifying mask. His eyes were bloodshot, teeth clenched, and his expression increasingly fierce. Zhen, having never seen Wenjang in such an uncontrolled state, felt real fear creeping into her heart. She realized she was facing a completely different version of the friend she thought she knew well. Survival instinct made her struggle, trying to escape from his grasp. Wenjang's rage didn't stop with Zhen. He decided to confront Hoan directly, the close friend he believed had betrayed him. The meeting took place in a tense atmosphere. Wenjang accused Hoan of deliberately seducing Zhen, destroying a love that belonged to him. He brought up every detail from the past to prove that he was the one who had been by Zhen's side from the beginning. Hoan was initially confused, not understanding why his close friend would make such unreasonable accusations. When Wenjang continued his reproaches, Hoan also became irritated. The argument escalated into a heated quarrel, and finally, everyone went their separate ways. Zhen thought that would be the end of their three-way friendship. But something unexpected happened. Just a few days later, Wenjang appeared with a remorseful face, apologizing and admitting he had lost his temper and said excessive things. He begged both of them for forgiveness. The kind hearts of Zhen and Hoan softened. They decided to give Wenjang a second chance because of their years of friendship. All three reconciled as if nothing had happened. Wenjang was careful never to mention his romantic feelings again, even appearing to accept the couple's relationship. Everything seemed to return to normal. But behind that calm mask, no one knew what turmoil Wenjang's soul was experiencing. 1 month before the final tragedy, fate seemed to send a warning, but no one recognized its true meaning. It was another ordinary evening. Hoan had just walked Zhen home, said goodbye to her on the 13th floor, then stepped into the elevator alone. Everything proceeded as usual until the elevator suddenly shook and stopped halfway. Hoan stood in the confined space, feeling a bit stuffy, but not too worried. He was about to press the emergency button when the elevator lights began flickering strangely, once, twice, then went out completely. Suddenly, the sound of metal hitting echoed from above. The emergency exit on the elevator ceiling opened, and a figure with a headlamp jumped down like a nightmare come to life. Before Hoan could react, the brutal attack had begun. Hoan tried to fight back, but something was very wrong. His head was dizzy, his body seemed to lose all strength. It might have been because the air in the elevator had been altered, or the attacker had used some kind of substance. Within seconds, he had collapsed to the floor, powerless against the unknown enemy. Then, the mysterious man took out a bottle of gasoline and began pouring it on Hoan. But then, something strange happened. After finishing pouring the gasoline, the man suddenly stopped. Whether due to awakened conscience or some other reason, he didn't carry out the final action. Instead, he used tools to open the elevator door and disappeared into the darkness, leaving Hoan in critical condition. Hoan lay motionless in the elevator for 40 minutes. Fortunately, another resident discovered the problem and called the fire department. When he was brought out, he only had some superficial injuries and dizziness from inhaling strange fumes. Otherwise, nothing serious. But psychologically, it was different. Hoan knew he had just escaped death by a hair's breadth, and the most terrifying thing was that he had no idea who the attacker was or why he had become a target. After escaping the jaws of death, Hoan and Ajen immediately went to the police station to report the incident. However, the investigation quickly hit a dead end. The attacker wore a mask covering his face completely, making it impossible for Hoan to identify him. Additionally, the old elevator wasn't equipped with surveillance cameras, so police had no photographic evidence. No witnesses, no traces, no clues. Police had to temporarily close the file. Real fear began eating away at Ajen's soul from then on. The thought that someone was lurking, wanting to harm Hoan, made her live in constant tension. But what confused her most was the attacker's motive. She thought over and over about Hoan, the gentle, simple boyfriend she loved. He had no enemies, wasn't involved in anything complicated, lived a simple and clean life. So why would someone want to harm him so badly? The more she thought, the more a terrifying idea grew in her mind. There was someone who knew Hoan's schedule well, someone with enough capability and motive to do this. Someone she had once trusted, but now had become the #1 suspect in her mind. That was Wen Jiang. The name of her old friend appeared in her mind like a terrifying lightning bolt. Only he had all the conditions. Knowing Hoan's activities well, having technical knowledge to carry out the sophisticated attack, and most importantly, having clear motive after his confession was rejected. But Ajen still wasn't certain. Could the friend she had once considered a brother really have become a killer? Ajen's thoughts weren't without basis. First, technically, Wen Jiang was completely capable of carrying out such a sophisticated attack. He studied electrical and mechanical engineering, always passionate about researching various electrical circuits and mechanical devices. With this professional knowledge, understanding elevator operating principles, knowing how to disable electrical systems, and even hiding on elevator roofs were all completely feasible for him. More importantly, Ajen had noticed troubling changes in Wen Jiang's behavior since his failed confession. Although outwardly he appeared to have accepted and reconciled with both of them, small details couldn't fool a woman's keen eyes. She often caught cold, resentful looks that Wen Jiang gave Hoan when he thought no one was watching. When Ajen shared these concerns with Hoan, he firmly rejected them. With his good-natured character and trust in friends, Hoan thought she was overthinking. In his eyes, Wen Jiang was still the close friend of many years, the person who had helped his family during difficult times. Even if there was resentment over romantic matters, it couldn't possibly reach the level of such crazy actions. He believed the elevator attack was just someone's malicious prank, or possibly a failed robbery attempt. Seeing Hoan trust Wen Jiang so much, Ajen didn't want to continue arguing. She knew that if she kept insisting on her suspicions without concrete evidence, it might damage her relationship with her boyfriend. However, worry couldn't be easily dismissed. From after the incident, every time Hoan walked her home, Ajen lived in extreme tension. She couldn't rest easy until she was certain he had safely left the building. The habit of standing by the window looking down had become a mandatory ritual. She had to see Hoan step out of the building with her own eyes before breathing a sigh of relief. The tragedy was that despite being so vigilant, Ajen still couldn't prevent the final catastrophe. Ajen continued telling police that perhaps Wen Jiang, because of resentment over her and Hoan's relationship, had wanted to create an accident to eliminate her boyfriend. But he didn't expect Ajen to discover the situation so quickly and call police and fire department, making it impossible for him to escape in time, forcing him to temporarily hide in a corner on the elevator roof. This explained why Wenjiang remained silent after being rescued. To clarify the truth, police sought out the church pastor for questioning. The pastor provided them with an important clue. It turned out Wenjiang always believed that the relationship between him and Zhen was divinely arranged, feeling that the two were destined for each other. Hoan's interference was also God testing him. Everything was trials on the path to happiness. He believed that as long as he persevered to the end, Zhen would return to his side. After learning about Zhen and Hoan's relationship, Wenjiang had sought out the pastor to confide, saying he would do everything to win Zhen back. These words made the pastor uneasy, so he advised him to let go of his obsession and face the situation rationally. However, Wenjiang completely ignored this, even believing the pastor was obstructing his pursuit of true love. After that, he felt disgusted with the pastor's words and gradually visited the church less frequently. By this point, Wenjiang had been listed as the #1 suspect by police. Faced with police interrogation, Wenjiang appeared calmly saying that Hoan was his good friend, that their relationship was very close. Even if he liked Zhen, he would absolutely never harm his friend. Wenjiang testified that on the evening in question, he appeared on the elevator roof because he knew Zhen had gone to meet Hoan's family. Out of curiosity, he wanted to ask about Zhen's situation, whether things had progressed to discussing marriage. But when he took the elevator to Zhen's door, he saw Hoan coming out, so he didn't visit Zhen's home and instead took the elevator down with Hoan. When the elevator was running, it got stuck between the 6th and 7th floors. Hoan had been trapped in an elevator before and was very frightened. Seeing this, Wenjiang suggested they both climb onto the elevator roof through the emergency exit. That way, if anyone discovered they were trapped, rescue workers could quickly save them. Both had great difficulty climbing onto the elevator roof. There were no lights up there. It was pitch dark. Hoan accidentally got scratched by a protruding piece of metal, which left the blood on the elevator roof. When injured, Hoan became even more worried and agitated. Wenjiang quickly tried to think of a solution. In the panic, he accidentally slipped and fell from the elevator roof. Wenjiang was so frightened that his whole body trembled, not daring to move until rescue workers arrived. When rescued, he was still panicking, still in shock from what had just happened, so he didn't answer Zhen's questions. As for why there was a nylon rope around Hoan's neck, he also wasn't clear. It might have been left over from construction. Wenjiang continued, saying he deeply blamed himself for his close friend's death. If he hadn't suggested climbing onto the elevator roof then, perhaps the tragedy wouldn't have happened. Wenjiang's testimony had many suspicious points. As a student majoring in electrical and mechanical engineering, he should have understood how to ensure personal safety when elevators malfunction. Suggesting to climb onto the elevator roof was incomprehensible. Moreover, there was no rope in the elevator shaft similar to the one around Hoan's neck. Although Wenjiang had many suspicions related to the case, due to insufficient evidence, police could only interrogate him and then let him go. Not long after, forensics made a new discovery. They found a piece of paper in victim Hoan's right hand. After analysis, the content on this paper was an excerpt from the Bible. Subsequently, police went to Wenjiang's house for a search. In a hidden corner, they found a large bag that rescue workers had retrieved from the elevator shaft on the night of the incident. At the time, they were only focused on rescue operations and hadn't paid attention to this bag. Inside the bag were a CO2 canister, a flashlight, a bottle of whiskey, a roll of nylon rope, a small knife, a roll of duct tape, a bottle of gasoline, a pair of gloves, a lighter, and a Bible. Among these, the nylon rope was identical to the rope wrapped around victim Hoan's neck. The Bible also had a page with a small piece torn off, and this torn piece matched the paper found in Hoan's hand. Additionally, police found receipts for purchasing the CO2 canister and gloves in Wenjiang's jacket pocket, bought before the murder occurred. When police presented this evidence, Wenjiang's face turned pale. He hung his head, his whole body trembling. Finally, police arrested him on suspicion of murder. Knowing he could no longer deny it, Wenjiang confessed to all his crimes. In Wenjiang's mind, Zhen was already his girlfriend. Horan's interference was a betrayal by his close friend from years past. He felt angry and heartbroken. He had sought out the pastor to confide, but the pastor advised him to let go. He felt there was no one trustworthy left in the world, only God was on his side. So he prayed to God every day, hoping for guidance to win back Ah-jen. Gradually, he conceived an idea: to eliminate Horan. Only then could Ah-jen come to her senses and change her mind. To avoid suspicion, he tried to be patient and continue being friends with both of them. In reality, he was secretly planning a perfect crime. Initially, he planned to lure Horan to a secluded place to strike, but worried about being discovered. After much consideration, he thought of using the elevator to create a locked room murder. His major was electrical and mechanical engineering. He knew elevator construction very well. With careful planning, he could completely escape punishment after committing the crime. He chose the location as the building where Ah-jen lived because he knew Horan often walked Ah-jen home in the evenings. Committing the crime there would be most convenient. The first murder attempt was 1 month before the actual murder. Wenjang had prepared murder weapons, followed Horan and Ah-jen. After both took the elevator to Ah-jen's home, he used objects to block the elevator door so it couldn't close. Then he quickly climbed onto the elevator roof through the emergency exit, used tools to cut the elevator's electrical wires, causing it to stop functioning. This way, when coming down, Horan would be forced to use the remaining elevator. After completing everything, he lay in wait on the elevator roof for his prey. Everything proceeded according to his plan. After walking his girlfriend home, Horan saw the elevator was broken and took the remaining elevator. At this point, Wenjang was already waiting on the elevator roof. The building where the crime occurred had been constructed long ago, so elevator malfunctions were common occurrences. The Kochu Road area also didn't have professional elevator repair personnel, often having to hire repairmen from outside. Whenever elevators had problems, repairmen had to come from elsewhere, requiring a certain amount of time. This created an opportunity for Wenjang to commit his crime. When the elevator was halfway up, he timed it perfectly and cut the power, causing the elevator to stop. Then he opened the emergency exit on the elevator roof and sprayed CO2 gas inside. Horan quickly felt dizzy, had difficulty breathing, and collapsed to the floor. Wenjang jumped down and poured gasoline on Horan. But just as he was about to take the next action, he suddenly hesitated when looking at his close friend of many years. He couldn't bring himself to do it. After some thought, he decided to leave. The first murder attempt had failed. Although Horan and Ah-jen later reported to police, due to lack of evidence, police couldn't investigate him. In the days that followed, Wenjang remained calm as if nothing had happened, continuing to behave normally with Horan and Ah-jen. Seeing the two frequently display affection in front of him, the flame of jealousy and resentment in his heart burned even more fiercely. He began to regret not being thorough the last time. He secretly swore that next time he would not spare Horan. On the day the murder occurred, Wenjang learned that Horan was bringing his girlfriend to meet his family. This made him extremely angry. A surge of rage rose in his heart. He knew that after the meeting ended, Horan would definitely walk Ah-jen home. And so the second murder attempt began. Wenjang put all his murder weapons into a large bag. This time he also brought a Bible, believing that everything he did was guided by God. Living on the floor above Horan's home, that evening he stood by his window observing. When he saw the two step out of the building, he immediately grabbed his bag, went downstairs, and secretly followed them. Horan took the elevator to his girlfriend's home, and Wenjang, following his old method, lay in wait on the elevator roof. At 10:45 p.m., Horan left Ah-jen's home. Seeing one elevator was broken, he stepped into the remaining elevator. Everything was under his control. When the elevator reached between the 6th and 7th floors, he cut the power. Then he sprayed CO2 gas into the elevator. Horan saw this and quickly pressed the emergency button, but it was useless. Wenjang lit a piece of cotton and threw it into the elevator. Horan panicked and called for help. Fortunately, the fire wasn't large and was quickly extinguished. Wenjang then jumped down through the emergency exit, pulled out the knife from his bag, and attacked Hoan. The two struggled with each other. However, due to inhaling CO2 gas, Hoan was dizzy and was quickly beaten down by Wenjang. Next, Wenjang took the nylon rope he had prepared and tightened it around Hoan's neck. This time he didn't hesitate at all, continuing to tighten the rope until the victim stopped moving. During the struggle, Hoan had torn a page from the Bible and gripped it tightly in his hand. After committing the murder, Wenjang planned to put Hoan's body in the bag and find a secluded place to dispose of it. But he didn't expect Azhen to discover the situation so quickly. His perfect murder plan was about to be exposed. In his panic, he came up with an idea: to throw Hoan's body down the elevator shaft. He tied a rope around Hoan, climbed onto the elevator roof through the emergency exit, then pulled Hoan up and pushed him down the shaft. After finishing everything, he huddled in a corner on the elevator roof, praying not to be discovered by anyone. But his plan had failed. He knew that sooner or later police would find him, so he had prepared mentally to be arrested. But he didn't regret what he had done at all. He truly loved Azhen and was willing to do anything for her. Wenjang's pathological possessiveness had ultimately twisted his character, causing him to step-by-step fall into the abyss, not only destroying others but also destroying himself. The case, once exposed, attracted the attention of many people. Media outlets competed to report the story. Society erupted in waves of debate about crimes of passion and religious fanaticism. At the same time, public opinion was also concerned about what legal punishment this lovesick man who had lost all reason would face. 2 years after the case occurred, Wenjang's trial was held at the Hong Kong Supreme Court. Wenjang was charged with murder. In court, Wenjang showed no remorse whatsoever, still insisting that killing Hoan was done on God's orders. His testimony shocked everyone present at the trial. After a period of deliberation, the jury reached a unanimous decision. The court declared defendant Wenjang guilty of murder and sentenced him to death. Although Hong Kong still had the death penalty at that time, no executions had been carried out since 1966. It existed only in name. Hong Kong officially abolished the death penalty in 1993. Wenjang's sentence was commuted to life imprisonment. The 1984 elevator case quickly became one of the classic cases in Hong Kong's judicial history, even being adapted into films. But behind that fame lies a painful lesson about the dark side of love and faith. The story of the Ko Chiu Road Trio became a warning about the fragile boundary between love and obsession, between faith and fanaticism. When belief becomes extreme obsession, when love becomes an excuse for possession, tragedy becomes inevitable. What do you think about this case? Share your thoughts in the comments below. Thank you for following along and see you in the next video.